Hello, everybody, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We are not going to be talking about a novel. We are going to be talking about a nonfiction book, and it's not only a nonfiction book, but it's not a memoir of some sort. The book is So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I'm going to be shamed because I can't actually say this. So You've Been Publicly Shamed. There it is, by Jon Ronson. For anyone who's watched Parks and Rec, every time I try to say his name, I end up saying Ron Swanson. It's by Jon Ronson, not Ron Swanson. And this is a book about people who have gone through some sort of public shaming, which seems fairly straightforward from the title. But so he talks about people that have gone through very intense, very public shamings via like Twitter or some sort of social media. So he talks about the woman who did the tweet where she was like, going to South Africa, hopefully I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white. And then there was some other stories, but basically what he does is he goes and talks to them after the shaming and kind of during too for some of the accounts, and is basically like, well, what did you mean to say when you said the thing that you said, and how has this changed your life? How has this affected you? And then for as many as he can, he does follow up like a year later or whatever to see how they've kind of bounced back. So it's not just, he does that, but it's not just about people who have been publicly shamed. He delves into the history of shaming. He talks, he does a little bit of research about how shaming used to be a legal disciplinary act. So putting people in the stocks and publicly flogging and public lynchings and that sort of thing. And why we as a country outlawed that. And he kind of gets into the moral questions of what responsibility do we have as the shamers to think about what we're doing, because like for the Twitter girl who tweeted the AIDS joke, it was in incredibly poor taste. But as far as I can tell, and this was his conclusion as well, like, she's not racist. It was a satirical comment because she was mocking how ridiculous the disparity is between whites and blacks still in South Africa. She wasn't actually saying, I can't get AIDS because I'm white. But people didn't give her a chance to even defend herself, and it ended up ruining her life. Like, she lost her job, had to move back in with her parents, like, ruined her life. And like, she can't get dates now. She had to shut down her like Match.com profile or whatever it was. So, was that justice done by the social warriors that went and basically ripped her apart on social media? Maybe not. I mean, again, it was a horrible joke done in poor taste, and I don't think she should have said it. But if your life is ruined, if ever someone's life is ruined every time they say something that didn't come across the way they meant to, and it ended up being in poor taste, I don't think any of us would have any lives left. So he talks about like when, taking responsibility for when you're shaming someone. Is it thinking about it? Is it really something you should be doing? So he not only talks about the effects of being shamed and how sometimes the shamings have brought about some good things. Like, he uses an example, I think it was 24-hour fitness, or no, not 24-hour fitness, LA Fitness. There was a woman who, I can't remember the exact circumstances, but they wouldn't allow her to cancel her membership for whatever reason. And she she couldn't afford it. So she went onto social media and basically was like, LA Fitness is refusing to allow me to cancel my membership, and I cannot afford it. And they were shamed into, because there was such a heavy backlash on social media, they were shamed into allowing her to cancel her membership. I don't remember the details. I just read this, but I don't remember. So he kind of is like, yes, there's good to be done, but there's also a responsibility that comes with that. And a lot of people don't take that into account and are kind of reckless with the things that they say. So reckless in saying something that could get them shamed, and also reckless in without considering where the person's coming from, basically just ripping them apart instead of being willing to listen to what they have to say. So that's really interesting. And I feel like in this day and age, that is a very important discussion that needs to be had. And I don't think there's one specific answer. I think we need to be aware of this, and on a case-by-case basis kind of review, well, why are we going to jump on this bandwagon? First of all, is this because we just want to be a part of something, or is there actually a legitimately good reason why are you actually trying to enact some social justice? The stuff that he talks about is not just social media cases. He talks about sex workers and the stuff that they go through. He talks about victims of sexual abuse and the shaming that they go through in court. He has a specific person that he's talking about in here. It's not just like on a general note, hey, this happens, but he has a very specific example of something that happened in court. He talks about scandals that happen in small towns and how these people who live in towns where everybody knows each other have to face the township of people they know. And it's I feel like this should almost be required reading for someone who is coming of age, because there's a responsibility in what we say online and in person. Honestly, in person just as much. It just has a higher chance of going viral if it's online, but it doesn't mean it's any less terrible to say some of these things if, it's in person. But so we have a responsibility to think through what we say and who we may hurt by saying the things. And that means either shaming someone who has said something we don't agree with, or being the person who could potentially be shamed. And I think that this day and age, so many people hide behind a keyboard with an anonymous username and feel invincible and able to just say whatever they want. And there's no longer this responsibility taken for your own actions. So this is a really interesting book that I feel like is important to open your mind to understanding how what you say affects other people from both sides of the spectrum. And the thing with this book is that there are all kinds of triggers. He talks about suicide. He talks about people in the sex industry. There's all kinds of people talking about, having affairs, politicians involved with scandals. He talks about sexual assault. And there's also some pretty strong language. So while I am really an advocate for people reading this, it should come with a parental warning. I don't know how else to break this book down. I mean, I can't talk about the plot line and the pacing, and because that's not the way this book works, but it is a series of vignettes about people who have first-hand experience with some form of shaming and how that has impacted them. And he himself starts the book off with an anecdote from his own life about someone he shamed, and it changed their behavior, and he felt like vindicated. And then he talked to the AIDS joke lady and was like, I wonder if there's anyone that I've, without even thinking about it, sent a tweet off to pile on and shame someone and ruin their life over something that they didn't even mean the way that we interpreted it. And he was like, whose lives have I ruined without even thinking about it? I sent a tweet off and I can't even remember their names. So it's interesting because not only is he telling these other people's stories, but he's telling them from the perspective of someone who's feeling guilt over potentially ruining someone else's life. And I love this book. I've read it, well, I read it once for school. So a couple years ago, And then I was like, well, I just want to refresh myself before I do this YouTube video, and ended up reading like 300 of the 400 pages. So it is fascinating because there's a part of our humanity that loves to peel the Band-Aid back and see the gross scab on other people's psyches of like the terrible things that have happened to them. You know, the rubberneckers on the freeway at an accident, that sort of a thing. And it's fascinating for that reason, but there's also, it's fascinating to think about the impact that actions I might have done without even thinking about them might have had on other people. So read with caution because of all of those trigger warnings, but also don't read this if you have no desire to be guilted about the way that you behave. Even if you don't think you behave badly, there might have been something you've said. There is a reason why I hardly ever post anything on anything. And part of it is because my life is pretty boring. I love this book, but it's very, very weighty. Not because it's densely written. It's just a bunch of anecdotes and short stories, basically. But because basically every chapter leaves you thinking, oh no, oh dear, that is terrible for that person. And also, have I ever participated in something like that without even realizing? So I highly recommend this book. I know I don't do book recommendations on this channel, but I feel like this is a lesson that everyone needs. And unfortunately, like I said, it's not necessarily great for children because of some of the topics brought up and the heavy language throughout the whole book. But I feel like this is a lesson that children need. So parents, read it and distill it to your children. Yeah. That's So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson, not Ron Swanson. And I don't even know if this is an audiobook version. I didn't even check. I apologize. I should have. But I read the actual book, and there's like 2 pictures in the entire thing. So this is totally one that you could do on audiobook if you wanted to. It's not like Jenny Lawson's books where there's like a whole bunch of pictures and you'd be missing out if you did an audiobook. So if you see an audiobook, I can't speak to the quality of the audiobook, but you're not going to be missing out on anything by doing that versus the print version. So, all right. If you like this book, well, if you like the book, let me know. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content, make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading. Talking about... There we go. Oh no. Well, that's what I need to do. Create more wrinkles. What am I doing?